today I want to talk with you about The 7-Year Slip, a contemporary romance / magical realism novel by Ashley Poston. This novel was first published in 2023, and at the same year it became a nominee for the Best Romance of the Year on Goodreads. As per usual, we will start this video with a short synopsis, and then proceed to the non-spoiler review and wrap this video up with the spoilers. If you haven't had an opportunity to read The 7-Year Slip yet, then do not worry. I will make sure to let you know when the spoilers begin. So, The 7-Year Slip gives us a story of a young woman named Clementine. After her beloved aunt's death, Clementine takes over her apartment with an intention to follow in her steps, to dream big, to embrace change, and to chase the moon. Despite being brokenhearted, Clementine does her very best to make her aunt proud, though falling in love seems to be something completely out of reach. And then, one day, Clementine meets a man who is someone she could absolutely see herself falling for. He's kind, fun, and his company is addicting. The only problem, though, is that he lives 7 years in the past and Clementine lives 7 years in the future. So what do you do when you meet the right person at the wrong time? Alright, so before we jump into this non-spoiler review, I just need to explain to you guys how I ended up here. And let me start by pointing out something that I feel like I have been pointing out a lot lately. But before The 7-Year Slip, I never ever heard of Ashley Poston. I have never read anything of hers. I don't even recall ever seeing her endorsement on a book I have previously read. And so my first encounter with The 7-Year Slip was when a customer wanted to buy it, and for some reason it wasn't on the shelf where it was supposed to be. To me, this novel was just one more book in a sea of romance novels I handle every day. And truth be told, at the time I was feeling burned out of reading so much romance. But then one day I ended up with this book in my hands and out of pure boredom decided to read the synopsis. And of course, I got instantly intrigued. The story promised in this book reminded me of one of my all-time favorites, The Time Traveler's Wife by Audrey Niffenegger, which you might know from the 2009 movie or 2022 TV adaptation by the same name, though in my humble opinion, neither one of the adaptations does the book justice. Still, after reading The Time Traveler's Wife when I was just a teenager, I have spent years trying to find another story that would leave me feeling as enchanted and simultaneously as crushed as this one did, with no luck, unfortunately. And now, The 7-Year Slip just appeared in front of me, and it actually sounded promising. So the same evening, I pulled up my audiobook app, found The 7-Year Slip, and put it on as a background noise while doing my chores. A couple of hours into the book, I found myself coming up with more tasks I could do just so I could continue to listen to the story. By the time I had to go to sleep, I was halfway through the book, and by the time I reached work, I knew that I absolutely must buy a paper copy of the novel because that's a book I will want to keep. So I did. I bought the book, I brought it home, and I spent the rest of the evening wrapping up the other half of the story. This book was everything I hoped for and more. While it's not nearly as drama heavy as The Time Traveler's Wife, it was a heartfelt and enchanting blend of romance, magical realism, and self-discovery. It's a book that is dedicated to exploring the complexities of love, loss, and personal growth. The 7-Year Slip was everything I hoped In 5 Years by Rebecca Sarley will be before I read it and was left disappointed. This novel, however, offers you interesting, charming, and multidimensional characters you want to root for without hiding any of their flaws. It is filled with feeling and romance and grief, and it is so beautifully written. Poston's evocative prose brings this story to life and imbues every scene with a wistful, almost poetic quality. And the magical elements enhance the emotional stakes rather than overpowers the human drama, grounding the story in universal truths about the passage of time and the courage it takes to move forward. The 7-Year Slip is one of the most original love stories I have read in the last 5 years, give or take, and it left me with a full heart and watery eyes. The way the author managed to balance humor, heartbreak, and hope while keeping this novel down to earth and easy to read is magnificent. It radiates warmth and optimism, and it is a perfect example of what a feel-good novel should be. I kid you not, as soon as I was done reading The 7-Year Slip myself, I went out and bought copies for my sister and for my best friend because I needed them to read the story too. Talking from a bit more of a practical side, I have to mention that this book has a single POV and closed-door romance, which is not something I particularly care for. Like, I don't mind it, but I tend to prefer to spend time in both of our characters' heads when it comes to romance novels, as knowing what is happening inside their minds, following them along as they fall in love, is one of the main reasons that entice me to read romance in the first place. This time, however, I honestly feel like having a dual POV would have been a mistake. Being trapped in Clementine's head, not being privy to all the information, made this book 10 times better. Because The 7-Year Slip is not just a romance. It's a novel about change, and we need to see that change as the outsiders, together with Clementine, for the story to work. And when it comes to closed-door romance, well, truth be told, the chemistry between our main characters is palpable. It's a bit of a slow burn, but it's so honest and endearing, and it showed such a level of intimacy that I didn't need to see them go to bed to believe their connection. All in all, The 7-Year Slip is a tender exploration of healing and the ways in which the past, present, and future intertwine to shape our identities. It's a book that will keep on giving you those butterflies in the stomach and will make you believe that some people are destined to find their way to each other. That being said, let's move to the spoiler review and talk a little bit more about the plot as well as the dynamic of our main characters. If you have read this book, you know that The 7-Year Slip is much more about the vibes, the feelings, and the thoughts it evokes than it is about the plot. There's no big plot twist or catch you moment. Yes, there are some truths that are being revealed as the story progresses, but the information we receive as the time goes by is mostly there to help us to understand our heroes and their characters better. Don't get me wrong, I am not saying that The 7-Year Slip doesn't have a plot. I'm just saying that it doesn't rely on shock value or sudden irrational conflicts or surprise pregnancies. The journey you take reading this book is relatively peaceful. You read and you know that all the information will be given to you in its due time. All the questions will be answered. And while there were a couple of moments where I wasn't sure that we would be getting a happy ending, I always trusted Poston to give us the right ending. I guess the two main plot lines we should talk about are the time travel leading to Clementine's, Ivan's, and James' love triangle and Annalea's death. When it comes to Clementine, Ivan, and James, for the longest time I felt torn. I wanted everyone to be happy, but at the same time I knew that not everything is just as black or white. Ivan is a dreamer, a sweetheart, someone not yet broken down by the hard parts of life. Someone still full of optimism, someone excited for the journey ahead. While James is someone calmer, someone more settled, more beaten down by life. And that's not to say that he doesn't have a great life. He's a famous chef who is about to open his own restaurant and publish a book. Career-wise, all his dreams are coming true. But James also had to lose a woman he loves. He had to lose his grandfather. He had to grind and prove himself to be worthy of his success. Time toughened him up. It turned him from an optimist into a realist, and yes, maybe he lost his track a little somewhere there along the way, but that doesn't make him a bad person. Truth be told, more often than not, Ivan and James did feel like two completely separate people. And reading the story from Clementine's point of view, you almost felt like you yourself are trying to fall in love and grieving a lost love at the exact same time. She's falling in love with Ivan, knowing that they have no future together, while simultaneously being attracted to James and agitated by the fact that James doesn't make her feel the same way Ivan does, which eventually becomes extra difficult as she gets to see them, talk to them, spend time with them, at the exact same time. She has a first row ticket to observe all the little ways this man had changed over the years. I think even for me as the reader, it was so much easier to love Ivan, because dreamers, the people who always see the world through slightly tinted rose glasses and who manage to find inspiration in the smallest, most mundane things, are so easy to fall for. Though, truth be told, I do not know if Clementine and Ivan would have made it long term, outside of their stolen moments in the apartment before. Dreamers are easy to fall in love with, but they're not always easy to love. As this book illustrated so perfectly, most people lose their youthful naivete once the reality of life starts to kick in, which leads me back to James. It might have taken us approximately 200 pages, but we did get to see the good, playful side of him. Just because he is a somewhat work-obsessed perfectionist, it doesn't mean that he is cold or unfeeling. And him feeling upset over the fact that his efforts are not being met with enthusiasm when it comes to his restaurant is understandable too. People change. I know that I wouldn't be particularly happy if someone would try to judge me now for not behaving like a 24-year-old or not pursuing the goals I had back then. And James had 7 long years to become the person he is today, to make new dreams, visualize new plans, get enchanted by new tastes and cooking techniques. And while this feels like a sudden scary change for Clementine, for James it has been almost a decade in the making. It has been 7 years during which he was shaped by his experiences and people in his life. It's only logical. Meanwhile, their happy love story is paralleled so perfectly with the tragic love experienced by Analea. While we do not get to see her story unfolding firsthand, we do learn how eventually Analea allowed her fear to rule over love. If she wouldn't have been afraid of her own story repeating, she would never have made a rule of not falling in love in the apartment. This rule alone should have been enough for me to understand that Analea wasn't just as happy or just as full of life as she wanted everyone to believe. And while I couldn't predict the suicide in the book, a friend of mine who experienced this tragedy in her life, she saw this coming from a mile away. When I asked her how, she told me that she saw it in the way Clementine grieved. Overall, I did appreciate the way the topic of suicide was handled in the book. It showcased very well the complex emotions of grief mixed with regret for not seeing the signs and the anger at the person who took themselves away from you without thinking about how it will affect you, and the guilt for thinking about yourself and your feelings in a situation like this where your loved one was hurting. Towards the end of the book, the author gives us this heart-wrenching paragraph that summarizes the complexity of suicide perfectly. If ever someone asked, I'd tell them the truth. That my aunt was amazing, that she lived wildly, that she had the most infectious laugh, that she knew 4 different languages and had a passport cluttered with so many stamps from different countries that it would make any world traveler green with envy, and that she had a monster over her shoulder she didn't let anyone to see, and in turn that monster didn't let her see all the things she would miss. The monster closed her eyes to all the pain she would give the people she left, the terrible weight of missing her and trying not to blame her, all in the same breath. Last but not least, I loved how the supernatural elements did not overpower this genuinely down-to-earth story. Time travel wasn't some kind of massive revelation. It wasn't that impossible big deal that made character B think that character A has completely lost their mind. Instead, it was handled more like a little secret, shared between those directly affected by it. When it comes down to it, this book is less about time travel and more about love, be that a romantic love or a love for a family member. It's about grief and inability to move on, or being afraid of how quickly things can change. It is a book with a massive heart that is sappy and cheesy at times, and that I absolutely loved and will look back on as years go by with fondness. And who knows, maybe 7 years from now I will sit down and read it again and enjoy all the little things I notice now that I didn't notice before. But that's just my opinion. What about yours?